When George met me, I was about 18 years old. And you're recording me, really? I told this story to B because I went to his house a number of times after he got injured. Thanksgiving Day, I think he got injured. And before that, he called me and said, hey, I'm preparing all of this stuff, I'm doing this, you gotta do a family will, you gotta do all this stuff. And I said, George, what the heck are you talking about? See, the George that you guys knew, I did not know. The George I knew was someone that I would go out to him and say whatever I needed to tell him. At 18, 19, I came to this country at 14. George knew every single one of my stories. One of the things I love about being with George was I was always hungry. Extremely hungry. So Rance, who I know he's here, Rance and I were always hanging around with George. Always. But George, the first time he asked, do you guys want to eat? That was the first thing he asked a college student. So I always went and hang around with him because that was my free lunch. Then he found out that I was being deported in 1996. I was here undocumented. And he asked me, what do you need? I never told him I needed anything. He was already feeding me. That's all I needed. Then he asked me, do you know how many Latinos are in science here at San Jose State? And I said, oh my God, there's a bunch of us, man. It's just that we don't make it past the first year. He says, what? I'm like, how long have you been here? Who in the heck are you, by the way? And he's like, oh, I'm Dr. George Castro. And I'm like, right away, he said Dr. George Castro. So I said, sure, I know some people. And he's like, have you heard of SACNAS before? And I said, no, I never heard of SACNAS before. It's like, we have money here to help you. You should be going to school and you can do things. George never called me mijo. George never called me son, never called me that. He always called me viejo. Maybe he knew something. He's like, viejo, I want you to do this, viejo, I want you to do that. And viejo, go find me those students. So I was kind of his go runner, go get stuff. When we first got the SACNAS group together, I talked to Gabby, Ana, Easy, Eva, talked to a bunch of Gerardo, who's, by the way, a professor, School of Medicine at UCLA. We knew George very well. And I dressed like this because this is how he met me. I was pretty much homeless when he found me, because I think he found me at San Jose State. And he knew I was a runner, believe it or not. He was also a runner. He loved running. And then I got to learn about George when I started inviting him to go talk to my students, because then he'd talk about him, and he was one of us. I think not a lot of us knew George in college, but he was one of us. George was not a 4.0 student in college or high school. He told me that. George was struggling with math, with science. When I told him about my war stories, he just sat there. And you know, George has a way of sitting on a chair when he's listening to you. And he puts his hands like this. And when he's really into you, then he crosses his leg. And that's how you knew he was listening to you and really deep into you. So I told him a lot of stories, my war stories, how I was supposed to be dead by the time I was 10. And he just loved listening to the stuff. But I loved spending time with him, even, thank you. I really wanted to thank B, Cynthia, Gerald, Valerie, especially Valerie, because she's the one I kept on bugging until she told me, okay, you can come and see Dad. And she let me come and see him a lot. I always talked to him. I prayed for him. I told him that, George, you don't want to meet God. He's located in the border of death and life. I hope you saw him, because I have seen him many times. And George, he would just look at me weird. When he found out I was getting my doctorate degree, he knew that I wanted to become a doctor. And he asked me, well, you know, you got accepted to the School of Medicine, why didn't you go? I said, George, it costs $500,000, I cannot go. Well, we can fix that. I'm like, no, I don't want to go to medical school, forget it. I think there's a lot more work to do in education. And he just smiled because my background was chemistry. He's like, we need Latino chemistry teachers. I think the only disappointment that George had of me was that I was from Nicaragua, not Chicano.
We make you Chicano. We make you Chicano. Puro Chicano.
But George didn't care about that. George didn't care who you were, as long as if you love science, George had a special place for you. Yeah. If you love STEM, he had a special place for you, George, because he touched us, not just in his spirit, not just with his money, but you know, when George knew that you needed something, he will help you. George was the hidden guardian angel that you have. Yes. When I first got my first job tutoring math and science students, chemistry, he asked me where I went. I said, I went to Overfell. He's like, you went to Overfell? And I said, yeah. We graduated from Overfell. And where did you get admitted? I said, oh, I got admitted to Stanford, Harvard, UCLA, but they don't want me because I'm undocumented. He's like, oh, you're at San Jose State? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to make it. They cannot pay for my school. And he's like, don't worry. Continue, keep going, you know, you'll figure out a way. And every time I went to go see the financial aid people, they always give me good news. Every time I went to go see the EOP people like Linda and others, they always had good news for me. There was always help. And I said, what are they? You know, that's really cool. It's not until later and later that you find out that he was just moving things for folks, just helping you in the silence, in the shadow, just moving things for you. Even in the career, when I started working, I mean, people are gonna say nice things about George, but George was nasty to people of power. He will call you out on your, I'm sorry, gotta keep it deep. He will call you out on it. He will take me to meetings, and those meetings were not happy. And this was with superintendents, with principals, with board of trustees. So we'll go to he's like, Viejo, vámonos. I'm gonna take you to Gilbert. Like, ¿qué fregado, where am I gonna go to Gilbert? Like, let's go to Gilbert. We went to go meet with people over there. And he was a lion. Like, I brought you $20 million. What the heck did you do with the money? You know, what's going on here? Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? Or when he went to Allen Rock, or who went to Eastside District. At Eastside District, I had a lot of fun because he was yelling at Ramon. I got you. What are you doing, Ramon? Come on, let's do this. So I ended up expanding after-school programs for George to almost 18 different high schools. We did a lot of work recruiting San Jose State students, even those who were immigrants and undocumented English language learners. We did so much with George. And he was just impressed. George made me a millionaire. Not just monetarily, but he made me a millionaire by really being around him and absorbing who he was, which I think I have turned in many ways like him on challenging and pissing people off, which I love to do on behalf of my students. And if there's something that he left in me, it was great. So thank you, Cynthia. And it was amazing to be around your dad and be a close friend of him. And one thing he told me, because I told him, can I put you down as my mentor? He says, you can never use that on me. He never asked me to call him mentor. So thank you for being here.